dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hams in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
Good morning, Muskegon. This is EyeOnMuskegon, and I'm Jim Riley, your host for this community conversation. I'm here in Muskegon's Clear Channel studios with my friend and engineer, Brian Thomas. Oscar's still out there, still kicking, and we expect to have him back sometime. But, hey, good morning, Oscar. Hopefully you're up listening, bumping up those Arbitron ratings for us. And helping us out this morning in studio is columnist, blogger, I say writer, and mother, and patriot, Tammy Derwin. Good morning, Tammy.
Good morning, Jim. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. And one thing I'd like to mention about Tammy, as I said, she's a blogger, and you're a columnist in the Examiner.
Yes.
And you are, I believe, in a few other newspapers also. But your columns, which I would highly, highly recommend to anyone, are online on a blog. And the address I'll read to you folks. It's www.libertyreview76. So it's libertyreview76.blogspot.com. But if you didn't have a pencil handy, or if you don't have a lockbox brain for memorizing things, that link is right on both EyeOnMuskegon and the MuskegonPundit.com website, so you can go to both of those. And your most recent one, which is I think really cool, which is The Constitution is Our Blueprint, is somewhat what we're going to talk about in just a moment.
Okay.
But just a couple of little things to let the folks know. In the 9 o'clock hour, we will have Jack Spencer from the Mackinac Center. And unless you've been living in a cave, you most certainly must see this incredible change, and I certainly believe for the good, that we are right on the cusp of in Lansing, Michigan, USA, and that is the very strong likelihood that we will have freedom to work for this state, so that we will be able to compete with certainly adjoining states like Indiana. But our workers will no longer be forced to pay into a union, and with those union fees in many instances going direct to the Democrat Party. I mean, think about this. Can you imagine if there was a law that required workers to be join a club that supported the Republicans? You can be sure that the frowny faces in the media would be double down on their frowniness. But this is freedom for workers in our state. And it's not done yet. So we'll talk to Jack.
And I believe we'd be the 24th state to go with
24th state, yeah. So this is not an anomaly. It appears to be the beginning of what may be a tsunami of freedom-like rules that will come across. So, knock on wood, this will happen. But more importantly, for you folks out there listening today at the 9 o'clock hour, we will have Jack Spencer, and he'll tell us what's going on. I know that it's kind of cool because I had asked Jack to be involved in our show a couple weeks ago in talking about Right to Work, and he said, well, we don't really want to talk about what we're doing right now. So anyway, we'll talk about that coming up. Now, I got a really cool quote from Tammy's blog, Liberty Review 76, and I'll read it to you because I'd like to. This should be the theme really for all of our shows, and this is a quote from a gentleman who I like to quote also, Patrick Henry. Mm-hmm. The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government, lest it come to dominate our lives and interests. And for those who like to pretend that the Constitution of the United States of America is a living, breathing document, in other words, something that should be changed with the times, rather than with the procedures that were voted upon, agreed upon, yes. and set in place over 200 years ago. What they want to do, of course, is they want to change the concept that government move from being restrained to government use its powers to restraining the people. And I think that's the ultimate cause here, because if you think about it, someone mentioned this to me, and I know it's maybe an exaggeration, but the difference between a slave and a taxpayer is really one of degree. A slave works for no pay, and taxpayers work for only a portion of their pay. And, of course, there's a significant difference above and beyond that. But the reality is that when you work, if you're working honestly and you're working for a company, or working for the government at some levels, and you are honestly being paid, the government, with the force of the police and the military and the force of arms requires that you pay what the government votes that you should pay for. And we agree with much of it, but certainly things are happening today that are very significantly changing that entire issue. And I'm going to go to what I think is the big issue here in Muskegon County. And that big issue, of course, is the possibility of us putting together some type of, I'll call it a scheme, and by us I mean them, to build a new jail. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time in today's show. We'll probably address it more so next week. But there were two big meetings in the last week or so put together by the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners, clearly orchestrated, and I guess I can't blame them, but clearly orchestrated to show the brilliance and the wonderfulness of building a new jail, and how ultimately, like all government programs, it will save you money in the long run. And then they made a financial presentation, which they presented this past Thursday. Now, the reason that this is important for you, there are any number of reasons, but of course, whether the jail is a good idea or a bad idea, it hinges on the fact that, do we have any money to pay for it? And the answer to that is essentially no. And there is a proposed schedule of events, which interestingly, this is part of their presentation, it does not specify when the county will be voting on this jail. And the only thing that they have for December of 2012 is finalize cost scenarios and recommend project alternative. So it's very possible that your county commissioners can, within the next week, because there are meetings Monday and Tuesday and Thursday for the county commission, and there are jail meetings, 2 jail meetings, committee meetings during the week also, that they could go ahead and build this jail, which is anywhere from $20-some million to $40-some million, and that goes on top of the about $140 million of bonded debt that we already have here in Muskegon County, and it compares with the bonded debt that Ottawa County, which is something under $40 million. Remember, let's listen to these numbers. Ottawa County's bonded debt is under $40 million. Our bonded debt is $140 to $150 million, and they want to add another
That's outrageous.
30 to 40 to 50 million dollars. And of course, that's what they tell us they're going to do. And someone please give us a call in and tell us the last time a government expenditure, a government building, a government project came in even within 20-30% of budget.
What I'm curious of is, I don't suppose they mentioned how much they paid this consultant.
Well, that's a really good question, because no, they don't. Although actually, someone did dig that up, and it was apparently the fee, if they decide to go ahead and utilize this consultant. I guess in the final deal, the fee is folded in. But just like when you buy a car and you get free financing, of course the fee is folded into the total cost.
Yes.
So, but even I think more interestingly, this is the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th consultant that has been paid for by county tax dollars, and of course the earlier reports were kept secret and apparently disregarded because they didn't come up with what this group apparently wanted. But I want to get to the most important point in this. Well, it may not be the most important point, but it's a very significant point, especially in light of the right to work push. That, by the way, the unions did push for a constitutional change, which we just
yes, they did.
Strongly, overwhelmingly voted against, and that would have codified in our state constitution the requirement for union membership to be an employee in the state of Michigan, and that was voted out. So there's a clear choice here in this state that we want to have some transparency, we want to have the freedom, but Muskegon County has done something that I think is unique. It may not be the only county to do it, but it's a county that we are clearly tight on money, and there is a policy that the county votes every year for, and it's called prevailing wage. The county has voted that they will use prevailing wage, which requires union workers and union wages that are set essentially in the corridor outside Detroit, which is the highest wages in the state. that we will use prevailing wage on any projects using county money. Now, I have been told that prevailing wage increases the cost of a building anywhere between 20 and 40%.
I can believe that, yes.
Well, I can believe it also. And matter of fact, the person who told me it was 40% was a leader of one of the municipalities in our county who does not require prevailing wage for their expenditures. And this ought to be a very significant issue because they are telling us that times are tight. They've got to lay people off. We have to have this jail, and if in fact that is the case, which I would certainly question, but then the first thing to address would be the forced using of wages that will push the cost of this jail project up significantly, and we'll find out what our union. What a slip of the tongue. What our county commissioners will vote on at some point. And again, this is all being kept from the citizens, at least in terms of the timing of this. So we'll find out. But this is a big deal, folks. Muskegon continues to fall behind the surrounding counties, and certainly in terms of attracting businesses, jobs, certainly in attracting people who want to move into the community.
Yep.
The residents, just simply our population at a time of massive growth in the last 10 years, in the last census, our population has remained stagnant. So
Yes.
that ain't good.
No, it's not. And having been a member of a union, I understand the prevailing wage and how they tried to push that.
Yeah, it's, well, we'll see. We will see if, in fact, we are going to lock ourselves into a jail that many people say we don't need, and we'll see if we're going to lock ourselves into paying far, far more than this jail ought to be. Again, and this is purely for the greed of the people who are running the unions. It's for the greed of the people who are running the companies that employ these unions, and frankly, it's for the greed of the county commissioners to use our tax dollars to curry support and favor from their cronies, their buddies in the community. And what we see, sadly, we just saw recently in the last couple of weeks, county commissioners purchasing vehicles, purchasing services out of the county, again, because it made them happy to spend our dollars in a way that didn't help our county in any way. As a matter of fact, in many cases, was not even the least expensive. So that's the way it goes. I do want to mention one other point about this. We will be at Carmen's Cafe as usual on Tuesday and Thursday. Lots and lots of important issues coming up on Tuesday and Thursday. Carmen's Cafe from 2 to 3:15. That's on the corner of Clay and Terrace. So come join us, and everyone is welcome.
Yes.
All right. Now, Tammy, we had billed you as someone who's really spent a lot of time looking at this kind of scary title, Agenda 21.
Yeah.
I know that Glenn Beck has spent a lot of time talking about it. Since I spoke with you, I've done a little bit of homework, but tell us what it is.
Isn't it scary?
Well, it truly is scary when you start looking into it, because it sounds like something was made up by some group of militiamen in Montana living in a mud hut. But in fact, it was created essentially by the United Nations.
United Nations, interesting. Yes. The plan breaks down to, it calls for more government control, building towards a new world government with the UN at the helm. And unfortunately, the laws and the executive orders that have been put into place by Obama, he's not the only one, but he has certainly greased the tracks for this nation. They're all kind of falling into line to bring UN Agenda 21 into the forefront.
Okay, what is UN Agenda 21?
UN Agenda 21. Well, like I said, it calls for the government to take control. The government to take control of all land use, takes private ownership right out of the hands of people. But
does not it also involve moving some of the power, the control from the government to the United Nations? Absolutely.
The United Nations would be the governing power of the world, is what it comes down to. But they have to start this at a local level. So things that are happening in your community are really leading up to a global government. and they do it in such a way that it sounds good. Of course, everybody wants to save the earth, recycle where necessary, but when it interferes with our civil rights, our freedoms, and ultimately the sovereignty of the United States, no, we have to put a stop to it.
Well, I'm not sure if this is part of Agenda 21. And Agenda 21 is primarily about land use, environment, sustainability, correct? It's more the environment and that type of thing as opposed to the issue that was just voted down recently, which was the some law that was going to give the United Nations control over setting rights for disabled people in the world. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. It would tie in because what Agenda is, it's also a whole life plan which takes over the educational system, the energy market, transportation, government, healthcare, and food production. So by forcing Obamacare in the way it came in, and then you look at what our Senate almost did, handing over the rights of the disability to the United Nations, that's kind of scary. All of a sudden, these dots are kind of coming together.
Well, let me just okay. So this disability rights situation then falls under Agenda 21, which is kind of interesting because when you start talking about let's say the environment or health for people. That can be expanded just endlessly. If the environment is important, well, then of course they can encourage you or force you to move out from the hinterlands, out from the country, because you'd have to commute to work. They could force you to where you're going to live. If the environment matters, they could say, well, wait a minute, you can only use a certain amount of electricity, or we're only going to produce electricity in a certain way, let's say windmills or solar or some other method. And the consequence of that is it's going to be more expensive, but again, the environment is paramount. And when you talk about protecting people, I'll just update folks on something. This just happened last week. The Senate of the United States just rejected by a 61 to 38 vote. It was only just a few more votes and this could have passed. We would have given to the United Nations the power. This is a treaty that we would have signed on to. And it's called the Best Interest of the Child Standard. Sounds like it protects children. But, of course, what it does is it puts the government acting under UN authority in a position to determine for all children with disabilities what's best for them. All right, now think about this. Not the parents, not Muskegon County Commissioners, not Governor Snyder, not President Obama per se. The bureaucrats, I would say arguably the United Nations is the most corrupt organization in the country or in the world, probably more corrupt than any of the organized crime groups, in good measure, because at least the organized crime guys, they admit that they're criminals, but they're pretty well organized, and they're probably not all that corrupt internally. The United Nations pretends to be something that it is not, and is very corrupt. And when it has been looked at, of course, we found, remember the oil for food program with Iraq back when Saddam Hussein was around, and we found that the United Nations was diverting millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars to its cronies within that program. But this disabled rights situation almost passed, and this is what's going on, I believe, with the Agenda 21s and others, where what's happening is we want to give up from the local levels, from even our family unit, our parental levels. Right. We're giving up the control. For instance, if you're at a mall and you spank your child, you're in doo-doo, right? Very deep doo-doo. Hey, we got a break coming up, so we will take this break, and we'll be right back talking about Agenda 21 with Tammy Derwin.
Heads up. Radio Juniper is a new one-hour show every Wednesday at 9 a.m. on News Talk 1090 WKBZ. I think you'll like it, but Wednesday at 9 a.m. is when you watch People's Court. So, here's the solution. Turn the sound down on People's Court and turn the volume up on Radio Juniper. They sync together better than Dark Side of the Moon and Wizard of Oz. It's spooky. Google that reference if you need to. And I'll see you Wednesday on News Talk 1090 WKBZ.
Hey, I'm Miles Austin, and I made the switch.
It's your boy 50 Cent.
Hi, it's Joan Rivers.
Paulie D here.
And this is Wes Welker, and I made the switch too, to a better source of energy.
We're always under pressure to perform.
That's when I need a boost to be my best.
Instead of those chemical-filled sports drinks, I drink SK Energy shots.
They're made with antioxidants and vitamins.
No jitters, no crash.
Just a smooth rush of energy that tastes great.
So we always feel on top of our game.
Yeah, buddy.
New SK Energy Shots make the switch to a better source of energy. Available at GNC, CVS, and your local retailers.
Bow Hunters, Long Range Archery. The Lakeshore's largest archery dealer wants you to be ready to shoot the big buck opening day. Take your bow in and have the professional staff tune and set up your bow to fit you correctly. Long Range Archery at 2530 Van Homan in Holland and M120 just south of Twin Lake.
Factory Surplus Sales in Montague has a huge selection of winter apparel. Hats, jackets, mittens, boots, and more. Everything your family needs to keep warm. All at huge savings. Factory Surplus also has everything you hunters need to stay warm in the woods.
I believe I can do anything. So when it came to learning a new language, I knew I had to do it the way I learn. No books, no memorizing or translating. I wanted to learn the same way I learned my first language, naturally. That's why I chose Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta Stone invites you to be a part of its biggest language learning event in history. Because this year, we want to help 3 million people learn a new language. That's why we're going to give you an absolutely free demo of our language immersion technology. To participate in this free nationwide event, just call 1-800-914-9572.
Si yo puedo hacerlo, usted puede hacerlo. If I can do it, you can do it.
To participate in this free nationwide event, call now for your free demo from Rosetta Stone. Call 1-800-914-9572. That's 1-800-914-9572.
Give a garden. You want to give one special gift. It shows that you love what they do. It gives them cheer all through the year. You always hear, thank you. Give a garden. Give a garden. Find something fun for everyone. Garmin.com, Garmin.com.
Hey, your holiday guests congregate in your kitchen, dining room, and living room, right? Well, the easiest, fastest, and least expensive way to transform your home's warmth and elegance before visitors arrive is with designer blinds, shades, shutters, or drapes from Blinds.com. And don't forget, Blinds.com offers free color samples, free shipping, no sales tax in most states, and prices that crush home improvement store prices. And check out details about their $5,000 holiday cash giveaway on now at Blinds.com. Blinds.com.
The Talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
And we're back at Eye on Muskegon. Got Brian Thomas, Jim Riley here, and Tammy Derwin helping us out about Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is very heavily connected. Well, it was designed initially by the United Nations, and it was actually relatively strongly supported by Governor George Herbert Walker Bush.
Yes.
Or not governor, president.
President,
he was
yes.
governor, but actually he was not. He was the president. And certainly President Clinton. Certainly perhaps to a lesser extent, but certainly supported by President George W. Bush and lovingly embraced with a big kumbaya by our current president. And I thought this was kind of an interesting thing on this day in history. I always like to pop out, and there's some interesting things that happened on this day in history. And one of those was in 1996, the United Nations Secretary General Boutros Ghali approved a deal allowing Iraq to resume its exports of oil and easing of UN trade embargo imposed on Iraq in exchange for the Oil for Food program, which, of course, was as corrupt as anything could be. And also, coincidentally, I love this. Today is United Nations has declared this to be International Anti-Corruption Day.
Isn't that interesting?
You talk about something that just really ought not to be. Nonetheless, they are celebrating that.
Well, what makes that even more interesting is that a lot of this information was available right on the UN website. That's where I downloaded and printed out a lot of my information. It is no longer available.
Now, that's interesting.
Isn't it? Yes, the UN has shut down its link.
Okay, that's very interesting because, and again, this isn't, so many people say, hey, this is some bunch of conspiracy folks. Look, government has an interest always, I've never seen it otherwise, in expanding its own power, its own control. The United Nations is essentially a government. They call it an NGO, a non-governmental organization. And they are interested in helping us make the tough decisions in life, like what to have for breakfast or how to handle a child, in particular a disabled child. And we got another break. This was a little shorty coming up, but we've got news at the top of the hour, and we have got Jack Spencer from the Mackinac Center. We'll be talking about the freedom to work here in Michigan. And then after Jack, we're going to come back and get a little more deeply into Agenda 21. So stay tuned, folks.
Oh, don't you love me sometime?
Dustin Plunkett, cleft palate, oral cancer, international speaker. Hi, it's Ryan Seacrest. And Dustin's Special Olympics story was made possible thanks to proceeds from the very special Christmas CD series. Go to iHeartRadio.com and search A Very Special Christmas Radio and listen to the last 25 years of music that's benefited the Special Olympics.
Hey, I'm Miles Austin, and I made the switch.
It's your boy 50 Cent.
Hi, it's Joan Rivers.
Paulie D here.
And this is Wes Welker, and I made the switch too, to a better source of energy. We're always under pressure to perform.
That's when I need a boost to be my best.
Instead of those chemical-filled sports drinks, I drink SK Energy shots.
They're made with antioxidants and vitamins.
No jitters, no crash.
Just a smooth rush of energy that tastes great.
So we always feel on top of our game.
Yeah, buddy.
New SK Energy Shots. Make the switch to a better source of energy. Available at 7-Eleven, Planet Fitness, and your local retailers.
The Talk of Muskegon is News Talk 1090, WKBZ Muskegon, and heard 24 hours a day on WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
It's here, and it's big. Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC has saved the biggest sale of the year for the final weeks of 2012. Every vehicle in Benton's massive 20-acre motor mall is on sale with huge year-end clearance prices. Shop over 1,000 vehicles and make the best deal you'll find anywhere. Benton has authorized their staff to pay even more for your trade for the final weeks of 2012. We want and need your trade, no matter the year, make, or model. We'll pay you more for it, guaranteed. Drive a new Chevy Silverado 4x4, just $198 a month. A 2013 Chevy Equinox, just $119 a month, or a Chevy Malibu, pick your color, just $109 a month. Chevy Cruze, only $89 a month. Get 0% for 72 months on select models. Due to our record sales this year, GM has authorized additional discounts up to $9,000 for this sale. Hurry, shop the year-end clearance sale this week while selection is best. No deal will be refused. It's where Michigan shops. Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC, Henry Street, Muskegon. Happy holidays from your friends at Benton.
Fox News Radio, I'm Salchi Ingresso. British police contacted Australian authorities about a possible investigation into a radio station's hoax call to a UK hospital. The result, the death of a nurse after she unwittingly accepted the call about the health of Prince William's pregnant wife, Kate, which was recorded and broadcast. The cause of the nurse's death still undetermined, but it's assumed she died because of stress from the call.
It's been indicated that the London Metropolitan Police may wish to speak to the people involved in the matter from Today FM, but we haven't been asked to do anything yet, and we certainly have not been asked to interview anyone or line up any interviews for the Met.
That's New South Wales Deputy Police Commissioner Nick Caldas. Members of an Egyptian presidential committee recommend that a referendum on a disputed constitution be held on schedule, but that the president rescind some powers he had given himself. Opponents only partially satisfied.
They've got part of what they want, and that is the abandonment of President Morsi of what were described by the opposition of these pharaoh powers that put him above and beyond, quite literally, the law.
Protests against the referendum continue. Jerry Brown of the Dallas Cowboys killed in an early Saturday car wreck, and his teammate Joshua Brent arrested and charged with intoxication manslaughter.
The focus from our standpoint on behalf of Josh is Jerry Brown, his family, his loved ones, his friends. This is a tremendous loss to him. This was like losing a little brother.
Brent's attorney George Milner. And a Heisman Trophy first.
They don't call him Johnny Football for nothing. The winner of the 2012 Heisman Trophy is the first freshman to score college football's most prized individual award.
Johnny Manziel.
The announcement on ESPN, the Texas A&M quarterback beat out Notre Dame linebacker Manti Te'o and Kansas State quarterback Colin Klein.
That's Fox Radio's Pam Puso, Fox News Radio, fair and balanced.
Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast. Scattered snow showers this morning, and that'll give way to a mixture of rain and snow this afternoon, a high of 38. East winds 15 to 25. Rain showers this evening, continued cloudy and windy overnight. Southwest winds 20 to 30, a low of 33. It'll still be windy tomorrow. Northwest winds 20 to 30, with a few snow showers developing later in the day. Temperatures nearly steady in the mid-30s. Keeping you informed, News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon.
Give a garden. You want to give one special gift. It shows that you love what they do. It gives them cheer all through the year. You always hear, thank you.
Good morning, Brian Thomas of WKBZ.
Find something fun for
Can I help?
everyone.
I'm good. Okay, we're going to be going into a segment in just about a few seconds, okay?
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Well, you dadgum.
Okay, is that going to be a problem, or is that going to work for you?
You got your damn hands
Okay,
in
we
every
trust.
pocket of my clothes. Well, you
Here we go.
dadgum government. Oh,
And this is EyeOnMuskegon, and we are back. We've got Tammy Derwin, Brian Thomas, and on the phone, we hope we've got Jack Spencer from the Mackinac Center. Jack, you there?
Jack, we're with you.
Oh, we don't have him on our. Okay, Jack.
I'm here.
Gotcha. Hey, Jack Spencer and the good folks at the Mackinac Center have been really involved kind of in the trenches here on this freedom to work issue. And Jack, maybe can you bring us up to speed on where we are now?
Well, Michigan is right on the brink of becoming the nation's 24th right-to-work state. The vote will probably take place Tuesday. It'll probably take place in a Capitol that's full of protesters. And it basically is two bills that have already passed the Senate, and they will pass in the House. There's absolutely no reason to believe they won't. They've already had a test vote in the House, and there were plenty of votes to pass this. And the governor will then, in due time, after it arrives at his desk, sign the legislation, and we will be a right-to-work state.
Now, Jack, there's something that a clarification that I didn't know. There are actually two bills out there. One that covers those who are employees of corporations and private businesses, and there's another one that covers the employees of government employees of the townships and counties and, I imagine, state. Can you explain the difference between the two?
Well, they divided it up. Apparently, this was the way they needed to do it, or thought they needed to do it. And the government employees one covers all those, affects all those, the people like in school districts and et cetera.
So teachers,
government, and yep.
Okay.
Everybody. The other one is private. Now, if you looked at what Indiana did a year ago, Indiana's law was every state has different laws and different ways that they have to do things. In Indiana, the governor, Mitch Daniels, simply could change the government workers, the government unions law by executive directive. He simply signed something. And then they went through the year-and-a-half battle that then last year made them the 23rd right-to-work state, and they had to get that passed in their legislature. So they're two different components. Obviously, there are some different laws that cover you if you're, you're working in the government sector, whether it be, state, local, or in between somewhere. And and if you're just working for a company and in a union position.
Okay, so there are two separate laws, but no longer then, when this ultimately is signed and becomes law, no longer will, for instance, Muskegon County say that you must be a union member in order to apply for and get a particular position. That's correct?
Yeah, and when the problem is when they, I could say yes, and that would be okay for most people, but the reality is that this always gets truncated a little bit because the unions will come back and say you currently can get out of the union, and you currently can't be made to pay dues, and they would be correct. This has been their little trick for years, but what it is really about, Jim, is all these years that you could do that, you still had to pay a fee to the union, no matter what.
Correct.
And that's what this is really about, even though you're going to read articles that say it's getting out of the union or it's not having to pay dues. The real technical thing is this fair share fee that you have had to pay no matter what if you had a union position, no matter if you hated the union, no matter if you couldn't stand the kind of things that the union would go and use that money for politically. You either had to quit your job or pay them money that they would then use for those purposes. That's what's going to change. The only area of the state which will have that, continue to have that, is the stuff covered under PA 312, and that's police and fire.
Okay, well, let's stick with the public side of this. So that means then, when this law is in effect, that if you are currently in, let's just say, the Teamsters union, and you are a county employee, that you can say, I decided I no longer want to be a union member, and I want to stop having the dues taken out of my check and sent to the union, and you still will be able to retain your job. Is that correct?
Right. You can retain your job.
All right. And that's then essentially the same in the private sector.
Yeah, that's exactly the same. The whole thing is you will have more people leave the union because now they didn't bother to leave the union because, gee, why leave the union? I got to pay this fee anyway. So you're probably going to see in Wisconsin the effect in some unions. And that wasn't a right to work, but it was of things that were the equivalent of it. Again, different states have different combinations.
Yes.
But when we saw Wisconsin go through what they went through the last year and a half, it was 50% that some of those unions lost. These were people who said, okay, I'm out of here now because I don't have to be here anymore in terms of participating with having to pay money to the union.
Jack, Tammy, I got a question for you. Do I understand it correctly that the contracts will ride out, though? This doesn't immediately take effect. It will start after the contracts of the unions run out.
I don't believe that's correct.
No. Okay.
Oh, that's great. Good question.
Now, I'm not aware of that. I can tell you that was an amendment that the Democrats tried to put on in the Senate.
Okay.
So why they would want to be trying to put it on if it's already in the bill makes no sense to me. But it will not take immediate effect, which means this thing will ride out until it probably actually becomes law sometime in March.
Is there an expectation of a legal challenge to this?
Oh, yeah, I believe that the unions have. This all came about because of them fighting because of Proposal 2, and they've fought every inch of the way of anything.
Now let's
the
just.
Governor tried to do it. I assume they're in a position now where they're gonna be pulling out all stops and every last desperate effort.
Well, let's just.
Sure, that will involve court.
Well, let's just clarify that Proposal 2 was the proposal that would have required unions in just about all cases in the state of Michigan, and that was overwhelmingly defeated when the people had an opportunity to vote on it, which essentially is really what propelled this move here, because for the first time ever, the citizens of Michigan had an opportunity to vote. They came out in enormous numbers to vote. And the Republicans, the conservatives, and I'd say more importantly, the Tea Party and organizations like the Mackinac Center said, "Hey, wait a minute! The people have spoken. Let's give some power and some control to their voice."
Well, this is the thing that's kind of interesting. Mackinac Center has, for decades, talked about right to work and talked about the policy, and obviously been in favor of that policy. But to have what occurred this year, which was all of a sudden the unions actually do something that was such a huge mistake, they basically created the situation where this happened.
Well, and not only
it's
that,
sort of like for us sitting there watching. And, of course, we were involved in informing the public about Proposal 2. But other than that, it was like, thank you, Bob King.
Well, to me, the shocking side of it is they made this magnificent blunder using the monies taken from their workers in this state. They forced the employees to pay them this money, and like so many government functionaries, like so many bureaucrats who live purely to suck up hard-earned wages from the American worker, they screwed the pooch. They did not utilize that money for the benefit of the employees. They essentially utilized their money in an attempt to increase their own power, and they failed miserably.
Yes.
Well, that's what all of this is about. All of this came about, I would argue, in reality, and I don't know what day it occurred. I can't put a date on it. But at whatever day, and I think it was decades ago, union members sort of stopped being Joe Sixpack and started becoming privileged. And I don't know when that was, some date in the 1980s, some date in the 1970s. But I really think that was when what's happening now and what's been playing out the last couple of years are the result of when the union ceased to really be fighting for basic rights, for basic protections, and really sort of separated away from their original ideas. Unions did a lot of good things at the beginning of their movement. I think most people would say that that's true. But at some point, that's human nature. It stopped being something. It stopped being what it was originally for.
Well, what I found interesting is I looked up Richard Trumka, and he earns $250,000 a year. And now I tried to find Bob King. I did get some information on him. I don't know what his annual wage is. But it's just interesting how Trumka will criticize the top 10% of this nation, but he is actually in the top 5%.
Yeah. Well, the hypocrisy of the union leadership is stunning. And Jack, I liked your point where the union workers, started or at some point moved from Joe Sixpack, the average guy trying to make a wage and trying to exist within a factory setting or what have you, into a specially protected special interest group that got special benefits paid for by other folks. And what we've seen here, I found it very interesting. The Muskegon Chronicle did a front page article about how local people were reacting to the to this legislation. And one of the folks that they, I thought kind of interesting, one of the folks that they decided to interview was a gentleman who was very active in the labor movement here in Muskegon, who was previously the head of the Sappy paper mill union. And, of course, the Sappy paper mill union employees are all unemployed now because the union who had promised them so many grand gifts and power and perks and everything else ran that company out of town, just as they have so many other companies, the Continental Motors and many others, out of this county. And like you say, it's one thing, you can kill the golden goose. We know what happened to the auto workers at the General Motors and Ford. Even those, even after the taxpayer bailout, the multi-billion-dollar taxpayer bailout, tens of thousands of American auto workers lost their jobs. So how's that working out for you, union members?
Well, basically, the idea of the collective bargaining and so on, I would argue only works when there's economic reality that's reflected. When you're in a business and it's the one where the union says, okay, it's time to negotiate, and they open their books and they can look at the bottom line and say, gee, you've had a pretty good year. I guess we'll ask for this and this. Or they say, holy cow, you guys are in bad shape. We better make some concessions. The problem is with entities such as government and, for a long time, such as the big three, that people think are literally too big to ever go under. That creates a sense of economic unreality. And it just pushes it forward where a government can pretend that it's not in debt for decades. We now know that. Government is not like a person. A person who lives on a credit card a little while, we know what's going to happen to them. But government has the capacity to pretend that they can continue to mount debts without paying the piper. And so this is what happens with the collective bargaining in those situations. You get to the point where the costs are just way out of line with anything anyone can ever pay. And that's the problem. The problem is when you have these unions and they're attached to something that has no connection with economic reality other than whenever the bubble finally bursts.
We have a big event happening here in Michigan tomorrow, I understand. President of the United States, President Obama, will be visiting Michigan. He's clearly against this rule. I've been reading, certainly the local television media has been very delicate in the matter, at least certainly framing the union view as someone who's been wronged. What are the chances something could come up and stop this? And what is the timing on it? When is the governor going to get the bills and have the opportunity to sign them? And can the president and others stop it before that happens?
I don't think constitutionally the president could do anything about it, but we've kind of learned that maybe that's not not where the line's drawn anymore.
Yeah, that's sad.
That's crossed a lot of people's minds, but I don't believe there's anything he can do constitutionally. I think that let's make it clear also here, Jim. Even with Proposal 2, they would not be doing what they're doing now if polls for the past 5 years hadn't shown consistent support for right to work among likely voters in Michigan. I don't believe you try to do this if the polls are showing only 41% or something like that support for this. But for the past at least 5 years, the polling in Michigan, not just one fly-by-night poll, but persistent polls, have shown the likely voters in Michigan, over 50% of them, I've seen them anywhere from 51% to 57%, support right to work. And that always helps embolden lawmakers.
Well, and we know lawmakers are cowards, so they need a little help.
Well, but it's just a lot harder to go out there and say, I'm on the side of the people if you've had persistent polling as well. 50%.
There we go. Yeah, well, that gives them the spine they need.
Yes, and so I would think that there's nothing really that the president could do or anything else. The news media is doing the normal reaction. The news media is probably stinging a little bit because most of them got caught off guard. The way this was played was very intelligently by the Republicans and the governor. They didn't want the unions marching down there with busloads of people for 3 weeks, so they basically were very quiet until all of a sudden Thursday, boom, they announced this. And so I'm guessing the news media, as well as their normal sort of left-leaning spin, are also stinging a bit by having it kind of sneak up on them. But I don't see anything stopping this.
What kind of timing?
I really think unless there's a 12-inch snowfall or something, I'm guessing they pass this Tuesday in the House, the two bills, and it's got to lay over on the governor's desk a couple days probably, and then that'll be it. It'll be before Christmas.
Oh my golly! Well, this is earth shaking. We've got to take a break here, and I guess we're going to have a small amount of time after the break before the bottom of the hour. But I want to talk to you, if I can, about this prevailing wage law. I know you wrote an excellent article in Michigan Capital Confidential, and I'd like to talk about that when we come back. So if you can hang on just a little bit.
Sure.
We'll be right back.
You can listen to that controversial talk. Up with that crazy morning show in Cleveland. Check out the latest sports talk in Houston. Or listen to the latest breaking news from the city it's happening in. You can do it with iHeartRadio. Only iHeartRadio lets you listen to 1,500 live radio stations from across the country or create your own station. And best of all, it's free. And free is always good. Download the app now at iHeartRadio.com.
But I do want to talk about this prevailing wage because, we've got this $20 to $40 to $50 million jail being built here.
Stored away, but not forgotten.
So let's.
For inside is our
how much time are we going to have,
film,
Brian?
And yet every year, these images begin to fade and deteriorate. Someday
okay, I'd rather not because we've got to attend
what
to
if
this,
that day was
this
today,
Agenda 21.
At the camera
so
shop,
can we go maybe
what we do. From photo restoration and digitization
let's just finish the conversation about prevailing wage, and then we'll have to let Jack go. Is that okay with you, Jack?
For generations to come, the camera
Thank
shop.
you so much.
We
I'm sorry
make
about calling you on your
come
cell.
alive.
You'd think
Have you been good this year?
A college graduate could
The
get
elves
two
have
phone
been
numbers.
busy at Sandy's Harley Davidson
figure it out,
filling the
but,
Christmas stocking. Enter to win a stuffed Christmas stocking from December 1st to 21st. One entry per day per person with purchase. Sandy's Harley
the other thing is you can't. Sometimes you can't hear when I'm responding.
Plus a huge selection of new and pre-owned Harley
but
Davidson
this has been real good so far. Yeah, no complaints. It's just I feel like a moron because I called the wrong freaking number again.
This is a totally clean line. It sounds like a landline on our end. So we got lucky here.
You'd better learn how to solve this because someday you're going to need it.
Moronic
if your algebra teacher ever tells you that, pay careful attention because he or she is absolutely right.
I'm groovy on that one.
You may never have to solve for X
Brian, how much
outside
time?
of the classroom, but by learning how to master this discipline,
okay, I'm going to grab a cup of coffee. I'll be right
back.
Will
learn how to master other disciplines, disciplines of your choosing, disciplines that will help your dreams come true. School teaches us some things we will use beyond the classroom, and some things we won't. But more importantly, school teaches us how to learn, how to succeed. If you can learn how to solve for X today, you will be able to answer Y tomorrow. And that is a very, very good thing.
Let us help you succeed in school and in life. Visit us online today at GoRocketCity.org.
Experience the music of Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper at the Rotary Club New Year's Eve 50s Dance Party with the Grand Rapids Symphony. 2 hours of the greatest rock and roll. Tickets available at Ticketmaster or the Grand Rapids Symphony box office.
The Talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
We are back at Muskegon's #1 rated
Wonderful.
political talk radio show. We continue our stranglehold on political conversation here in West Michigan. This is EyeOnMuskegon. Jim Riley back here with you, Tammy Derwin and Brian Thomas. And on the phone in beautiful Lansing-ish area, we have the Mackinac Center's Jack Spencer. And we were, before the break, I was talking to Jack about this Eaton, well, we were talking, of course, about freedom to work, but Eaton County, sometime this past year, had dumped the prevailing wage law. And Jack, can you explain that? Because it's very, very important to us here in Muskegon, because we're getting ready to spend $20, $30, $40 million, and Muskegon's currently under a policy that the county commissioners have voted that requires the use of union labor and prevailing wage labor prices for all county construction. So can you jump onto that one?
Well, basically what prevailing wage is they set this, what amounts to a minimum wage that has to be paid, a minimum cost that you pay for construction in particular, but it can be other things. And they take some kind of average of the area you're in, and that sets what you can't go below. And of course, it means that you have open bidding, but the open bidding has to take into account that this extra cost, and so it obviously increases the cost of any project. Eaton County dumped theirs this summer. They'd had prevailing wage for a long time. But to think that the point you might be interested in, Jim, is this is not the rule in the state of Michigan. 2/3 of these local governments do not have prevailing wage.
Well, I know here, even in Muskegon County, that some of the local municipalities do not have prevailing wage. This is something that the union-controlled Muskegon County Board of Commissioners, those people who have got their own special interest group, their own greedy folks that do support them, have forced that on us here. But that's interesting that a significant number of the other counties don't take that suicidal, financially irresponsible position.
Well, especially all the wrestling that's been taking place, particularly over the last decade with local costs. You'd think more and more of them would be shedding this. And there actually is talk about the state. The state has prevailing wage that affects things like some of the universities and so on. And probably if the right to work thing hadn't come up and dominated and rightfully so, dominated the lame duck session here, that was one of the things that possibly could have taken place at the state level. There was a lot of talk of the state dumping their prevailing wage.
Let me ask you, we have this new freedom to work movement. Does this bill in any way change the prevailing wage law?
No, this is all about a person not having to contribute to a union unless they want to.
Okay, they can be a member of the union, but they don't. They are not forced to contribute as a requirement.
They would get out of the union. I mean, they would say, "I don't want to be in the union." It means that when they get out of the union, that's it. If they choose to get out of the union, they're not paying.
Oh, that's right. Okay, today you can be you can be out of the union, but you still have to pay under the new law. Needless to say, the union's not going to say, "Hey, if you don't pay, you can still be our buddy."
Yeah, and I don't want to dwell on that too much, but I have listening to the arguments all day against it last Thursday. They constantly come back and say these people are then free riders because now they're going to get the benefit of the collective bargaining the union does, but they won't have to pay for it. And, of course, the answer to that is the only reason they have to live within the collective bargaining thing is because the union says they do. If the union wanted to say, okay, you're independent, bargain with the employer yourself, they could do it. So it's the union that stands in the way of them being independent. So the free rider argument is really totally false.
Well, and in many instances, if you take the pay of union shops and subtract out the union dues, they get considerably less pay than the non-union shops. And, of course, the ultimate problem I think that the union folks and the union supporters just totally ignore is that the results of being in a union means that you've got a very good chance of losing your job. The union overplaying their power has resulted in companies leaving, shutting down, disappearing. And for those of you in particular here in Muskegon, where you've got one of the loudest voices, the proud president of the Sappy Workers Union, saying how important unions are, that's just incredible. Like they took dum-dum pills.
Well, I think one of the most overlooked developments of this last year, nationally even, were the two big cities there in California that went bankrupt. And you have people standing there in unions who suddenly have these pieces of paper that are absolutely worthless. And it's amazing to me the extent to which people have the news media has not caught on. If you have the underlying economic reality set in, as it did in those two cities, then I think to those folks, it's probably real clear now what the problem is.
Well,
we tend to ignore those kind of stories so often.
Yeah. Well, it's not so much we. You certainly, in the only investigative journalism that's regularly produced in Michigan at the Mackinac Center and Michigan Capital Confidential. You guys do it, but it's pretty sad that when we do see the reportage on national TV, on local TV. Almost every one of those folks, by the way, are in unions, are they not? And of course, they've been decimated like crazy. Certainly, talk to all of your good friends in the newspaper unions and see how wonderful the unions have been for all their ex-buddies who are no longer employed. So,
well, look what's happened at Hostess. 18,500 people lost their jobs.
Yeah. And again, that was because the union said, essentially, screw you, you'll bend over. To the management, and of course the management, which interestingly was led by a Democrat-controlled. I believe that Dick Gephardt and some other famous Democrats were in charge of that group of vulture capitalists, and of course we saw the result of unions protecting union jobs. So, well, Jack, hey, thank you for joining us on a Sunday morning. Very much appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Hopefully, we won't have to talk about this ever again. Just like your fine work in protecting home health care workers from this forced unionization also. So thanks again.
Yep, thank you very much. Always good to be on the show.
Well, love to have you. We'll talk to you later on.
Okay, bye.
The Talkin' Muskegon program can now be heard live every morning, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. here on News Talk 1090. This is John Van White.
And Brian Worsham. We will focus on community events, news, weather, and sports. We'll also bring you traffic updates, weekly segments like the Movies with Ron Van Timmeren, the Biker Report, and Lumberjacks. This is Talkin' Muskegon right here, 8 to 9 a.m. on the Talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090.
Variety, the children's charity, is partnering with Walt Disney Pictures, Pixar, and Celebration Cinema to bring you this year's Gold Heart Pin campaign featuring Monsters, Inc. These special gold pins will be available for a limited time. Your donation can open doors for youth in our community and are available at all Celebration Cinema locations. Proceeds support Boys and Girls Clubs of Grand Rapids. Support Variety and Boys and Girls Clubs of Grand Rapids and show your heart of gold.
It's here, and it's big. Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC has saved the biggest sale of the year for the final weeks of 2012. Every vehicle in Benton's massive 20-acre motor mall is on sale with huge year-end clearance prices. Shop over 1,000 vehicles and make the best deal you'll find anywhere. Benton has authorized their staff to pay even more for your trade for the final weeks of 2012. We want and need your trade, no matter the year, make or model. We'll pay you more for it, guaranteed. Drive the new Chevy Silverado 4x4, just $198 a month. A 2013 Chevy Equinox, just $119 a month, or a Chevy Malibu, pick your color, just $109 a month. Chevy Cruze, only $89 a month. Get 0% for 72 months on select models. Due to our record sales this year, GM has authorized additional discounts up to $9,000 for this sale. Hurry, shop the year-end clearance sale this week while selection is best. No deal will be refused. It's where Michigan shops. Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC, Henry Street, Muskegon. Happy holidays from your friends at Benton.
Yeah. I am the new way to work, and I am not alone. More companies, from the startups to the large multi-location companies, are realizing that office solutions from Regis are tailor-made for their needs, whatever those needs may be. With Regis, they get to invest in their business instead of lobby art and phone systems. They get the local presence they need without the long-term lease. I am the new way to work, and I'd like you to join me. Start now and get 2 months free at regis.com/radio or call 1-800-OFFICES. That's 1-800-OFFICES.
Fox News Radio, I'm Karen McHugh. A blast of wintry weather is in store for much of the Midwest today.
We do have some significant snowfall to talk about across portions of South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, with over 6 inches of snow possible. Some places could see locally up to a foot of snow.
Fox meteorologist Maria Molina, heavy rain and possible tornadoes are forecast from parts of Texas to Tennessee. Fiscal cliff or no fiscal cliff, get ready for some tax hikes in the new year aimed at funding the new health care law.
The IRS has published the rules about the taxes. Investment income for households earning more than $250,000 a year will be subject to a 3.8% tax. Regular income for those households will also face an early 1% Medicare surtax. There's also a 2.3% tax on medical devices.
Fox News Radio, Steve Knight. Sunset last evening marked the beginning of the 8-day Festival of Lights for Jews the world over, Hanukkah. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Here is the official
I have
News
to have
Talk
my sound all the way up,
KBZ forecast. Scattered snow showers this morning, and that'll give way to a mixture of rain and snow this
I'm at the
afternoon, a
max.
high of 38. East winds 15 to 25. Rain showers this evening, continued cloudy and windy overnight. Southwest winds 20 to 30, a low of 33. It'll still be windy tomorrow.
Gotcha.
Northwest winds 20 to 30, with a few
Yes,
snow
I know.
showers developing later in the day.
When you get
Temperatures
over
nearly
it,
steady in the
look at that.
mid-30s.
They are
Keeping
awful.
you informed. News Talk 1090 WKBZ,
really is
the
very
talk
hard
of
to see.
Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos, you got your damn
And we are back at the #1 rated political talk radio show in Muskegon County, probably in all of West Michigan, and who knows, maybe in the entire state of Michigan. Eye on Muskegon. And we were talking about a lot of different things here. Now, before we get jumping into with Tammy Derwin about the Agenda 21, I got a couple little housekeeping items here. A lot of folks have been calling me about watching the TV show, and we continue to be on Monday nights from 8 to 9:30 on Comcast Channel 397 or Rabbit Ears out of the TV 38. But there's been a mechanical problem over there, and they have been repeating the same show for a few weeks. So please continue to look in. We will attempt to update you when we get those mechanical problems fixed. We're still recording the show, and we do put it on EyeOnMuskegon.com. Every Sunday afternoon is the audio, where we do have photos, because that's the only way we can upload it. But then we do put the video on Eye on Muskegon, usually sometime during the week. So you can always watch us. And I've had people call me and say, Jim, I'm having a heck of a time finding your show on YouTube. Don't bother to go to YouTube. Go to EyeOnMuskegon.com. We put all the videos there. And we also have Tammy's link to her blog, Liberty Review 76.com. Also, I'm quite proud of the MuskegonPundit.com blog. It is mostly what I use for my show prep, but it's all sorts of really great links to cool articles. And so you can always look at MuskegonPundit.com. You can look at EyeOnMuskegon.com. And I've started something just a couple weeks ago called the Muskegon Weekly Reader. And a lot of people have been asking me if I could put together a compendium of information for what's going on, what's coming up in the next week at the county level, and maybe there's something important at a city level, and maybe a little review of what happened in the past week, and also with some of the links in there. If you're interested in getting on this list, just send me an email at EyeOnMuskegon@gmail.com. And it's EYE on Muskegon, all one word, @gmail.com. And just put the Weekly Reader or Reader, and I'll add you to the list. We're getting a big list of folks who are getting this on a weekly basis. And again, we're just trying to get the word out to you. You may be a supporter of the jail and the way things are going. You may not be, but at least you'll get an opportunity to see real information. As a matter of fact, we just got the information of the presentation that was made to the county on Thursday, and we will be putting links of that onto that you'll be able to see on the Reader also. So those are things that you can do. And let's get back to Agenda 21. And with Tammy Derwin. And Tammy, I know you've done a lot of homework on this thing. And one thing that I happened to see just in this past week is that the United Nations has been actively interested in taking control of the Internet, which has apparently been a free-flowing operation up until this moment. I guess it continues to be. But there's something that's called the International Telecommunications Union, which is the United Nations body, which is seeking to control the Internet. And what I found interesting here was, among many other things, was the Russian-educated head of this International Telecommunications Union, said, quote, "The brutal truth is the Internet remains largely the rich world's privilege. The ITU wants to change that." And on first glance, that sounds like, well, geez, maybe they want to make it the Internet available to other folks in the world. Mm-hmm. And what they really want to do is they want to force what they view as the rich to start paying dues and monies to their union, yes. which they will then disperse in the ways that they seem fit. And this to me is maybe not specific to Agenda 21, but this is exactly what the United Nations wants to do. They want more power, and most of the power that they want comes from taxation and regulation that results in hiring people that they want or things of that sort. So I don't know if this is an Agenda 21 issue, but I know it most certainly is an issue that's important to most of us who use the Internet.
Absolutely, and the proof of this is that the UN link is down. They're controlling information by not putting information up. And you have China.
I mean, that's fascinating.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Just, I mean, and I found out about this on Friday, I believe it was. And as soon as I heard on a radio program, actually, that it was down, I started, going to, www.unitednations.com. Nothing.
Because you had been going there in the previous month here.
Yeah, I have.
So recently.
That's just it. This UN agenda is UN. It's not United States. I mean, they want to implement it here. But this is not a Republican, it's not a Democrat issue. It's a global issue. And my information has come right from the United Nations or a couple of books where people have done a lot of research.
I think it's important to understand this. You brought up something here. When I was attending this meeting about this jail that's going to be foisted upon the taxpayers and the citizens who may end up residing in the jail of Muskegon, there are people on both sides. The Tea Party types, the fiscal conservatives, are saying, "Look, I'm not against the jail necessarily, but we've got to come up with a legitimate way to pay for this jail." And on the other side are the folks that are they think that people are being unfairly jailed, that the people in Muskegon jail are being picked up in good measure purely to fill the jail up so that the sheriff and new jail supporters can show, ooh, it's full and therefore we need this. So this isn't a left versus right issue. It is an us versus this entrenched bureaucracy, these functionaries, in our case with the Muskegon County Commissioners, their buddies in the unions, their buddies in the construction companies that will be building it, their buddies in all these consulting firms, etc. And when you talk about the Agenda 21 and these others, it's the same kind of thing. It is not Republican versus Democrat. As a matter of fact, one of the earlier supporters of much of the Agenda 21 issues were the Bush father and son, and many Republicans out there support this. As a matter of fact, in this United Nations treaty, it was a 61-38 vote. So many Republican senators crossed over, and I think we have to start understanding that our freedoms are being attacked, and they're using items like Agenda 21, using the United Nations, using Obamacare as a foil to increase the power of government. And it's us people. It really ought to be those of us who are the citizens. You don't even need to be a taxpayer because you drive on roads that aren't repaired because the monies are going to Solandra and all these boondoggles that enrich the supporters of various politicians. But it's us against the government bureaucrats and functionaries.
Yes. And what I found interesting in the book I'm currently reading is she states everything that has happened was meant to happen by the government. So you see all these executive orders that have been written and implemented. Well, not yet. They need a crisis to implement them. And once there's a crisis, the match is struck and the dominoes fall.
Well, you mentioned something in your most recent column, and that in this case, I think these are recent ones, that President Obama had signed executive orders to create. Now, this sounds like science fiction stuff.
Does.
To create some camps or some training for people, and these you can, I imagine, you can look up at some point.
It is still available. I looked last night, and all you have to do is go into your search engine, whether that's Google or Bing, and put FM3-39-40, Internet and Resettlement Operations. These are camps that have been built.
No, wait, they've been built in this country? They're already in existence?
They're already in existence. And
that doesn't sound
It doesn't
real.
sound good.
It doesn't sound real even.
No, it doesn't.
How do I know that?
I downloaded this entire PDF file.
Okay, and it's from whom?
It is from the United States Army that was made for the DoD, Department of Defense.
Okay.
And in it, it's very troubling, to put it lightly. I've had this information for several months, and quite frankly, I couldn't look at it.
Well, no, wait a sec, though. Let me ask you a question here. You're saying that camps have been built, but there's nobody in them. So, in other words, areas have been marked off and roped off. Okay.
Right.
Where would they be? Because
that is the interesting part. We don't really know where they are.
Well, then wouldn't you surmise that maybe that's something that's on paper that we may do? I know one of the arguments has always been that, hey, we given what we just had with Katrina, what we just had with the most recent hurricane in New Jersey and New York, that a lot of these people are living without resources, that maybe if we had, you might call them camps, but might have places for them to go set up in the event of a catastrophe. That seems like not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea if that's what it's truly used for, and that is how some of it is worded, for displacement. But it's, again, it's the government here, and the government can change their meaning on a whim.
Well, we've seen how effective the government's been in protecting and taking care of those folks in New York and New Jersey. It's been a disaster, as it certainly makes sense. What I just was reading just yesterday, that a gentleman whose house apparently was essentially untouched in New York, and a destruction crew went out. They had the address and they saw the house and they just took it down. He had been out for a little bit. He came back. His house was gone.
A perfectly good-looking home, a home apparently undamaged, is
correct.
It's gone.
Yeah. Because it was the right address, and of course other houses not too far away were left in their state of disrepair. Well, there's some other things that I've read. John Van Wyk, who I do a radio show with during the week, the Talkin' Muskegon show, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 o'clock. But he had mentioned something that he had gotten, because of course he's a long-time employee of Verizon and Gentel and GTE and all that. But there's a new report out. Listen to this. And I double-checked on this. This was listed on CBS in Washington, D.C. Verizon, the big telephone company, the big communications company, has filed a patent for targeting ads that collect information from infrared cameras and microphones that can detect the amount of people and types of conversations happening in customers' living rooms. So not only does the technology exist, Verizon seems to think that it's such good technology that, in fact, it ought to be, they're going to put a patent on it. And those of you who are old enough to remember, and I certainly would recommend that you go out, if you haven't read it, pick up the book George Orwell's 1984. Yes. Because one of the more frightening concepts to come out of George Orwell's 1984 was the concept of Big Brother is watching. Because in that book, in this totalitarian state, we had the TVs or screens in every house where government could watch you and determine what you were doing. Now, I don't want to get deeply into this new situation with these electric meters that will essentially allow the government to look at not just what your electricity usage is, but look at it from millisecond to millisecond, and actually look and see what types of appliances that you're using and things of that sort. Right now, there's no nefarious reason, but that kind of information given to the government may matter.
Yeah, technology is wonderful unless it falls into evil hands.
Well, and that's why we want to give people the opportunity. If you say, wait a minute, I want this meter, or I want to get involved in this, if you voluntarily join into it, that's one issue, because then you can voluntarily pull out. But if the government says we're going to force it, that's an entirely different issue. And Exactly. I'll give you just a couple of other things that I've read during the week. FBI now, as it turns out, this is one of the top National Security Agency mathematicians. FBI records now the emails of nearly every single United States citizen, including members of Congress, and that may account for how the General Petraeus was picked up, because the FBI and other government organizations are now digging into emails. Certainly, one would expect that they're probably, and illegally, I believe, doing the same with telephone conversations, probably texts and however else that we choose to communicate with. Are these the kind of powers that we really want to have folks who might not have your best interests at heart And to me, this concept of the United Nations interested and with the support of many people in the United States. In other words, you can imagine we could easily give over control to the United Nations. We came within 5 votes of giving over control to the United Nations to a treaty, an international treaty for disabled rights for disabled people. Now, you can imagine that if some functionary sitting in Brussels or in New York or who knows where decides that the ecology is such and world economies are such, things are stretched so tight that we really can't afford to have Down syndrome's people to be birthed. Certainly, they've made a conscious decision that the fetus is not a human being, that in fact it's a fetus. And there's any number of things that can be done. I don't want this to be a tinfoil hat kind of a conversation, but when you give power to government, they almost always tend to overplay it. And as Tammy, you have written, and that great quote about the Constitution, they will do it. And I'll give you one other final one, and I'll let Tammy jump in here. But apparently, those of us who grew up and went to public schools in this country. I mean, I remember reading Catcher in the Rye and Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, which, of course, the movies have been played all over the place lately. Those books, now this is a national-wide move to suggest that those books be replaced by informational texts, and this is called the Common Core State Standards. By the way, this is from the United States, the federal government. And they suggest non-fictional texts, and here's the title of a couple of them. The Invasive Plant Inventory. We're going to replace To Kill a Mockingbird in literature classes. You're going to read The Invasive Plant Inventory. This is by California's Invasive Plant Council. Or Recommended Levels of Insulation by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Now, this is like crazy stuff, and you can imagine that a teacher who gets this is going to say this is crazy stuff. But these are people at the federal level being paid your tax dollars at federal rates that are saying this is what we ought to be moving to.
Now, aren't the liberal side, aren't they more for the arts? And now they want to replace arts with science?
Well, it's...
I mean, isn't that kind of a controlling of artistic freedoms or something?
The interesting thing to me is that this article was written in the Telegraph, which, of course, is a British newspaper. It has links to the facts. I mean, I did research it. And matter of fact, it's many other of these articles have popped up in other places. But you would think that the teachers' associations, arguably the most politically powerful groups in the entire country, would be screaming bloody murder on this. And apparently they're not. And, of course, neither are the teachers' unions, neither are the black communities screaming bloody murder over the fact that their children are not getting educated. So you have to set back and look at their actual actions and say, wait a minute, there's a certain group of people that, for whatever reason, does support the increased power of government at various levels over them. And again, this goes back to the Agenda 21
And
concept.
it does because they're using the environment to bring in their policies and their laws. And that to me has been, it was Bill Clinton who got this going, and Al Gore was his vice president. And what has Al Gore done? He's just pushed this green movement, which, and unfortunately, it makes anybody who stands up against this look like they're not in favor of, keeping the earth, from over polluting it. It's not that. We need to be responsible as humans on this planet, but we cannot give up our civil rights and our freedoms in the process, and that's is what they are trying to do.
Well, and one of the programs that you're alluding to, and I'll give you the name of it, is called Cool Cities. I sat through a full day-long presentation that was given by these 4 very attractive, all trim and thin, and had just flown in from New York or from Washington, D.C., federal employees making a big proposal about cool cities, which cool cities, it's a very, very complex concept, but generally they believe that people are better off living in cities. They came up with all these surveys showing that college students and young people prefer to live in cities. The people who are against this kind of cool cities concepts, they came up with acronyms to demonize them. I think they call them crappies, citizens, resisting environmental, logic and things of that sort. And these are maybe ideas that are worthy of being debated, most certainly worthy of being debated in the public sector, but not being paid for. These are political ideas of the left being paid for by the monies that are taken, well, in your case, in our case, borrowed from your children, borrow the money from China, indeed. And then indebted your children for these programs and send these folks all over the country pushing these concepts that are really anathema to the rest of us. Hey, we are at the end of our day. I apologize for, these things always go so quickly. Don't forget, we do post the full show, EyeOnMuskegon.com. Look for us. Certainly, again, you may see the same show if you go on primetime TV, but we are on every Monday night, Comcast 397 and TV 38. Hey, thanks again, Tammy. Mackinac Center's Jack Spencer. Really appreciate Jack's hard work over there. Brian Thomas, great to see you, buddy. Hey, Oscar, we missed you. We're looking forward to seeing you back here soon. Thanks to all you wonderful listeners out there. And next week, I haven't decided on what we're going to do on the show because there's so many issues happening. We got the President of the United States coming in tomorrow. We've got this jail issue. They got 4 big meetings. Who knows what they'll be talking about, what kind of things they'll slide in for their crony buddies at the county level. We've got right to work that's getting all over the place. So we will be back next week. You can be sure of that. Then next week we will put the eye on you, Muskegon.
Hey, I'm Miles Austin, and I made the switch.
It's your boy 50 Cent.
Hi, it's Joan Rivers.
Paulie D here.
And this is Wes Welker, and I made the switch too, to a better source of energy. We're always under pressure to perform.
That's when I need a boost to be my best.
Instead of those chemical-filled sports drinks, I drink SK Energy Shots.
They're made with antioxidants and vitamins.
No jitters, no crash.
Just a smooth rush of energy that tastes great.
So we always feel on top of our game.
Yeah, buddy.
New SK Energy Shots make the switch to a better source of energy. Available at GNC, CVS, and your local retailers.
Hey, your holiday guests congregate in your kitchen, dining room, and living room, right? Well, the easiest, fastest, and least expensive way to transform your home's warmth and elegance before visitors arrive is with designer blinds, shades, shutters, or drapes from Blinds.com. And don't forget, Blinds.com offers free color samples, free shipping, no sales tax in most states, and prices that crush home improvement store prices. And check out details about their $5,000 holiday cash giveaway on now at Blinds.com. Blinds.com.
This is WKBZ Muskegon and WOOD HD2 Muskegon.